Oh, it's Rog. It's Monday, and we come together on a day that we all lost a friend. The United States men's national team are out of the Copa, our own party that we're hosting. A nightmarish, dark day for all who love the game and its growth in this nation. World Cup 2026 is just 710 days away, but who's counting? Tonight, was it? I mean, we can talk about the performance tonight. We can talk about the act of arson against Panama last Thursday. But tonight we face Uruguay, the best, the most fearsome of all Uruguays. And I got to say, we gave them a brave fight. We went toe to toe. I mean, this was not serious football. This was CONMEBOL meets CONCACAF Fight Club. I've got to admit, it was a snarling ball of aggression that was impossible to ignore. And we went down 1-0 in the heat of Kansas City. And I don't know about you, in full hello darkness, my old friend mode. I keep thinking about this Oscar Wilde quote that they promised us that dreams can come true, but forgot to mention that nightmares are dreams too. That's what I'm feeling tonight. Here's what pains me. Top line. We're living in a world in which the United States of America got further in the bloody Cricket World Cup than we did in the Copa America. Matthew McGee in the chat says, JJ Redick to the USA. It's the only logical move. But let's talk about all of this honestly. Where does the United States go from here? Do we leave tonight or do we live and die this way? We'll break it all down, as well as the Euros round of 16, which rumbled on quite ecstatically. And we'll take your questions. And I'm not here alone. It is a delight to welcome to this show on a dark day. There's always a ray of light, even on the stormiest of eves. One of the OGs of North American two sports adoration, a world-class athlete who decided to pursue basketball instead of his beloved football, inflicting a loss on the Canadian national team, the magnitude of which we hope Jesse Marsh will never experience. A Hall of Famer, two-time MVP in the NBA, lifelong fan of Archie Gray's Tottenham Hotspur, part owner of Mallorca and the Vancouver Whitecaps, a gent who once told me that the first word he ever learned to speak for reals was goal. And on Canada Day, no less, it is magical to welcome the pride of British Columbia. It's Mr. Steve Nash.
Hey Rog, how you doing? You look glum.
I've been better. I mean, nights like this are ones that I normally listen to Tracy Chapman's debut album on repeat on my own. But Steve, as a Canadian, are you laughing at us? Do we amuse you, Steve Nash?
Well, I don't want to be too harsh. We've only scored one goal, but we found our way through. So it's been a good little ride here for Canada. We've maybe rode our luck a little bit. The sending off helped a touch the other night against Chile, but it's obviously nice to go through. Although I feel for the Americans.
You do, for you're a big-hearted man, and we're going to break down this game together, Steve, because I'm not quite sure how we got here, and I definitely don't know what we do in this heart of darkness. This is a Do It Live presented by BMW. Which means you, dear GFOPs, can be part of the show. Come on up. Tell us how you're feeling in this moment. Just scan the QR code in the top left of your screen. Take you into a Zoom with our producer, Tony. He'll get you up to ask your question momentarily. Come and be with me and the great, rational, big-hearted Steve Nash. It's audio only. Do not be afraid. Bang your thoughts into the chat. Give us a like. Give us a cuddle. Give us a hug. We need some love today. We really do. Just come and be with us. Redheaded Redemption in the chat says, it's a damn shame someone already hired Emma Hayes. It's so bloody true. I do want to start with a toast to the one American left in the Copa America. That would be Racine, Wisconsin's greatest. Jesse Marsh, 3 official games into his Canadian national team tenure, has delivered a signature achievement. He led a team who've gone to 2 World Cups. I think they won the Gold Cup once. Canada, they are now in the knockout round of the Copa, which ranks as one of the top achievements in the nation's history on the men's side. Team beat Peru for the first time ever, held 10-men Chile to a 0-0 draw, which is enough to progress. Up next, a July 5th quarterfinal against Venezuela. This is a high-octane squad you've got, Steve Nash. Jesse's inherited it. He's still coming to grips with it. He's conjured a single goal, as you said, so far. He said his team are not satisfied. But I do know, because I've spoken to him, Jesse's having a blast. And whatever the Canadian word for Schadenfreude is, I bet you he's drinking a huge pint of it tonight after this game. Steve, I know you've been in France, but can I get a temperature check on whether you like what you've seen from your boys?
I do. Before I get into the current team, can I give a shout out to the guy who started on the right for Canada in their Gold Cup victory back in the early aughts, which was my little brother Martin Nash. So it's been a good 20 plus years, I think, but definitely enjoyed that one. Yeah, it's good. Look, obviously we've developed a bit of talent in Canada recently in the last 4 or 5 years, and you can see some of the footballers doing well around the world. Obviously, we all know the headliner, Alphonso Davies, but Jonathan David, you go around the park, there's some players that have started to thrive. A little bit similar to the U.S. squad, although maybe not of the same magnitude, players that are doing well in Europe. At the same time, this is a big step up for me, CONMEBOL. There's a lot more quality that, look at Uruguay tonight. They didn't really have much to play for. The intensity was outrageous. Not to mention the quality, they were able to zip the ball around when they needed to, get tight when they needed to, and to keep that intensity. I checked just to make sure it wasn't a cool night. It's 81 degrees in Kansas City, and they were flying around. So impressive from Uruguay, impressive tournament. Unlike the Euros, which is kind of champagne and caviar, this is the street fight, and
It is.
and it's amazing. Like you said, you can't take your eyes off it, and there was definitely moments of quality. I thought Pulisic and Reina had some moments tonight were outstanding. But again, we were lucky someone wasn't decapitated partway through this match. I thought the referee lost it. And, for Canada to get where they are is a great step. But I think, as much as anything, we want to see results, but these experiences are important to play meaningful games, to come together, find a way through, to be under pressure. When you get to the next opportunity, you have some scars. And so I think that's what Canada is building right now. And hopefully the U.S. will learn from this one as well.
I love the way you described the Cooper. It does sound like going outside of the dive bar into the alleyway for a cigarette and just suddenly getting into a street fight by the garbage cans, a fight for your very survival. That's what we witnessed tonight. William Roberts capturing the mood perfectly in the chat. I'm too drunk to taste this chicken or scan the QR code. Come on up, all of you. Come and tell us how you are, because we're going to descend together and relive what happened in Kansas City tonight. Steve, for USA 0, Uruguay 1, which came after the emoliation against Panama. The mission was to win against Uruguay. By the way, Uruguay, population 3,459, 3,459,000, roughly the same size as Connecticut. A remarkable footballing story in their own way. But the goal for the United States, in a funny way, hadn't changed. We wanted ahead of this tournament to see our boys go toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful teams in football and win. And we naively told ourselves that would come in the quarterfinals against, would it be Colombia? Would it be Brazil? Do you remember how much we agonized over that debate, GFOPs? Columbia, actually, university gave a study where they said 85% of your life's fears actually never come true. That is the Colombia or Brazil panic that we agonized about before this tournament. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because we were playing tonight a ferocious, intelligent, physical team, a Mate-powered, Grinter-driven Bielsa ball purveyor, and we needed to beat Uruguay, and to do so with that 2-goal advantage over Panama maintained. This was a collision between two narratives, Steve. This team has a reputation, or we tell ourselves it must-win games, like the World Cup qualifier in Honduras, the Iran game in the World Cup. We win these games, but also this. Gregg Berhalter had never won a game against a non-CONCACAF power in a real match that mattered. And based on what they'd done in the Copa thus far, ahead of kickoff, can you teleport us back? What were your feelings as you tuned into this game? Were you optimistic for the United States, or did you feel a sense of fear and doom?
Somewhere in the middle. Maybe I don't have as much or as high expectations of this group as perhaps the optimistic American fan. There's plenty of talent, but I don't know that they've necessarily made me believe they're going to go out and beat the likes of Uruguay. They can, they're capable, but not on most nights, I would say at this point. So yes, there's talent around the park for the U.S. Yes, I think they've come together in some ways. They've shown glimpses, but I think they're still just a ways off. It'd be great to see them take that big jump in the next 2 years for the World Cup. This was an opportunity to kind of prove that out, but it doesn't mean it's over. This tournament may be over, but the opportunity to really prove on their home soil that they are able to take the next step with some of this talent that maybe we haven't seen this much talent playing and succeeding in Europe the way they have in top 5 leagues. So I don't think hope is lost at all, but I didn't have necessarily as high expectations or think they were going to come out tonight and win.
I love Stevie Nash coming on this show with his objective analysis. It's a great counterpoint to my hyperbole and big dreams, and I think many of you do share. Our best hope in this game was that Uruguay had little to play for. They were already locked into that next round. But no, Marcelo Bielsa unfurled an unchanged lineup, the one that had just blasted 5 goals in their last game. Gregg chose to play Musa in the midfield. Tim Weah's red card taking him out of the lineup. Uruguay manager Bielsa also suspended. I was urging that Gregg would take the field with a bucket just so he could show Bielsa he was going to go toe-to-toe, match up with his system. But he was searching for his first signature white whale of a win to replace his draw against England in the World Cup and the friendly draw against Brazil that made us all surge. We've got to talk about the coverage for one quick moment, Stevie Nash. This was a CONMEBOL production, not a Fox production. We should make that clear for our friends at Fox, we know they're good broadcasters because we've watched the bass fishing. But this camera angle, Steve, biggest US game of the cycle, and we're essentially watching from a drone floating just off, I think, the second ring of Uranus. I don't know if you suffer from vertigo, but if you did, this must have been a long, agonising night. I've never seen anything like it. We are not the field, the camera angle. We are not serious people.
There's also a couple injuries of fellas just coming off the sideline, trying to claim a ball before it runs off, and the wall's right there and whatnot. This is the game's come so far in this part of the world, but these are still stories to be told one day when the game has really, really, really arrived. And so, but again, it's a baby in a lot of senses, and having said that, we were stuck by CONMEBOL, who's been around succeeding, winning World Cups for 100 years. So, maybe we shouldn't feel so bad about that.
I think that's fair. If we were playing in a Thunderdome, is what you're saying. At GFOP, at Supports Ball tweeted us, I think we're watching from Taylor Swift's box. And Christian Pulisic had said, the American players after the Panama loss need to go and play the game of their lives. That's it, was what he said. And I've got to say, the opening was helter-skelter. Uruguay, tactically, mentally, physically. They play Bielsa ball. And one of the things I found hardest about watching Gregg Berhalter's teams is that we spend most of our time in CONCACAF, which is like a parallel footballing universe. We often try and replicate Barcelona 2011 era football against patsies. And then we do play these big teams, real big dogs. And are often just shown to be lightweights, shown to be wanting. Our best performances come against England and Brazil, where we actually try and dispense with being Xavi and Iniesta cover bands and play pragmatic, gritty, reactive fighting football. But this one, from the off, we didn't back down tonight, Steve. We need to acknowledge this. The opening from the United States was fearless. Tyler Adams sizzling, front foot. This was like a game of FIFA where both opponents are just sprinting back and forth ceaselessly.
Yeah, let's be honest. Tonight's performance, I didn't have a problem with. The Panama's where they lost their way, and incidents like this happen. I'll as a Spurs fan, I'll mention the Musa Sissoko handball in the first 45 seconds of the Champions League final against the red team, not to be mentioned on your podcast. But this is the game changes, and these little quick, short moments of play, and I think that's what happened with Tim Weah the other night. And all of a sudden, the story of this tournament changes. So I feel, unfortunately for the U.S., they were a little bit hard done by that moment, and trying to have to win tonight against a terrific side, was just a little bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, this was hot, sweaty, scrappy fare. You said earlier, and I agree, you watched the Euros, you were essentially watching neoclassical ballet. This was CONMEBOL meets CONCACAF. This was power slap fighting. It was. I mean, fascinating in its own way. I've got to be candid. It was football as if won by Dana White. And you couldn't take your eyes off it. I mean, bodies were all over the floor. This was carnage. Maximilian Araujo stretched it off after taking heavy contact in the box. Then Balogun taken out, limped off. This is prison shiv football. The officiating didn't help. There was a moment where the ref gave a yellow. Yeah, have you seen? I mean, Uruguay played on. What happened, Steve? I mean, this was insane.
I mean, it was typical of the region to the two regions to have a 32-year-old have his first assignment in a must-win U.S. game with a Uruguay team that never backs down. I mean, I think Stu Holden said it. There should have been 2 or 3 cards early on just to calm the game down. We were lucky someone wasn't decapitated here, and hopefully the fella who landed on his head isn't in severe condition at this moment. But it did get out of hand. I think that didn't help the game. I mean, it was a spectacle, but it didn't help the game necessarily. It kind of it brought everything out of both teams on maybe the over the edge portion of their proceedings. So it was great to watch, but at the same time, like you said, it was at stages of it. It was it football or was it just intensity? And so it was insane to watch for moments. I think that's what happens when you have a referee for his first time in those shoes, afraid to make the wrong decision. I mean, the Pulisic where I think it was a handball, but he turns the guy and runs away, and he calls the ball 40 yards back. I mean, obviously, it's just I feel for the lad. It's his first big moment, and maybe he wasn't quite ready for it. Everyone needs to fail to get better. But those were bright lights, especially for the American fans.
I love what you just said. Was it football or was it just intensity? I think it was a knife fight, Steve Nash, one that was fought only with spoons. We've got to shout out the referee, Kevin Ortega. I mean, Stewie Holden said he'd had 7 international games, was completely out of his depth. There was that one moment, the play on, where, my God, shout out to Tim Ream, who just reached out and extended his 18th century leg that's made of an ancient oak tree and scooped that ball away. I don't know how he did it. I don't know what we were watching. It was chaos. And word then got out. Panama had taken the lead through a Jose Fajardo Hulk smash, which meant the US had to score or hope Bolivia could equalise, which at that moment felt like we'd have to hope Bolivia could actually learn to play football or else was lost. And the frenzy went to 11. At times it felt like watching a really good high school soccer game. Couple of really good players on each team, and then a lot of super athletic kids flinging themselves around like hand grenades. Pulisic, we got to single him out. What a performance tonight. I mean, that gent gave us his all. He was tenacious, he was hungry, he was pulsing and surging at will. It was honestly magnificent to watch.
Super direct, never shied away from trying to take someone on, come get the ball under pressure, turn and face and go at people. I mean, that's not easy to do, but you could tell by the words he said before the match, he followed it up and came out trying to go at people and make the difference. I mean, he's obviously, we all know he's a terrific player. And, but again, the referee was lucky that Tim Ream got that leg on that ball. I mean, could you imagine if that had ended up as a goal? It would have put a lot of controversy in a game that, the U.S., I really thought the U.S. performed quite well overall and under the circumstances, but, they only mustered a couple shots, I think, over the 90 minutes, but it would have made a different lens, I think, on the affair if that had been a goal, but that was just horrific referee. He's literally putting his yellow up and then running after the play on. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
Oh, my God. Michael Oliver, everything we ever said, I take back. Well, not all of it, but most of it. Into the second half, honestly, I didn't know what to expect. It felt like the centre circle could have just cleaved open, swallowed 3 of the players into a pit filled with scorpions and snakes, and the referee would have just waved play on. And into the BMW moment of the match, there was just a moment of delirium. News spread that Bolivia had scored a big boy goal. The crowd crackled. Gregg held up his fingers, 1-1. For a second, it felt like we were through. We'd reached our promised land somehow. We were in safe and glorious harbour. But we barely had a second to celebrate before our joy turned to ashes in our mouth. Uruguay free kick. Matt Turner could only parry the header, and Matias Oliveira swooped in and prodded home. It was an agony because he looked from our admittedly funky camera angle, which was shot from a Death Star, essentially like in a black hole on the edge of space. It was hard to really tell angles, but it was an agonizingly long VAR. And I think what we've learned is when they do the VARs in CONMEBOL, everyone in America has got to open the Venmo and just send CONMEBOL a couple of dollars. That's how their VAR works. Because Steve, I didn't understand the decision. It was hard to tell what went on, but how? You're an objective, sane human being with no dog in this fight. What did you make of that goal and the VAR decision that followed?
You have a hard time convincing me that was onside. VAR seems to be different in every different league, country, region of the world. The way we re-referee games with VAR, the way we interpret the rules, the way we use the technology, it just seems different all the time. And so it's a shame. We've added this measure of replays to try to get it right, and it seems like we've just made it more complicated. So by the pictures I saw, what are we talking? A toe that maybe kept this onside versus a whole shoulder and chest that was put offside? I don't understand. I feel like in the Premier League that would have been offside all the time, and so I'm not sure what to think the way they interpret the rules and use VAR.
All I know is GFOP at Malcolm Whitman insted us and said, I think if Lukaku played in CONCACAF, he would be the single greatest striker of all time. It was fight or flight now for the United States. They had to chase the game, left themselves all the more vulnerable. As a result, tossed on all of our strikers. Finally, Hadji got on the field, Josh Sargent too. Then news came, Panama scored a second and a third. We were out for the count. The night became really about trying to draw anything, another moral victory. I'm honestly so tired of the moral victories. We talked about this before the Copa. We wanted victories in this tournament. It was not to be. The US are out. I've got to ask you, Steve, you are a sane, rational, objective human being. You've established this. How do you understand what is wrong with us from the outside? We are so proud. We're so proud of our players, Steve. We're so proud that we have 11 starters who play for the first time in our nation's history for the 5 big leagues in Europe. Everyone plays on a club team there. But the football is a collective. There's what we dream of. There's such a delta to the reality, the results. How do you explain ourselves to ourselves? Is it the tactics? Is it the youth? Is it the inexperience? Is it the game time that our guys are actually getting at those top 5 league clubs? The Panama game. Oh my God, that Panama game. How were we not prepared to know that Panama would just come in and shithouse the life out of us? Was it the lack of concentration? Is it the crazy self-destructive moments of ill discipline? What is it about us that's leading to us yearning but not fulfilling those yearnings?
That's a great question. I don't want to be too. I don't want to make any salacious, critical comments because I think the game has come so far. Like you said, to have this many players succeeding and playing major minutes and appearances in top 5 leagues, and obviously you can see there's quality out there for the U.S. But it's still a baby in many sense. Like I said earlier, the culture of the game in Uruguay is over 100 years old. Deep number one by a million miles compared to the other sports in South America, Central America, Europe, around the globe. I think, look, we're here competing on 340 million people, but that doesn't really matter if they're spread out amongst all the sports, and the culture of the game here is really far behind. There's something to be said, I think, for the style of play, the way of playing, having your grandfather watch the same side and your father, and you played in the backyard, hearing the stories and learning about the game. These are things I think we don't consider sometimes when we think about where we expect the national team to be in this country. It's a lot of our best players probably grew up, early on with a dad coaching teams that never played the game. I'm not saying that in any sort of disparaging way. That's just the reality. And I think that that also has to be factored into the equation, that there's the culture of the game, there's a history, there's a lineage, there's a way of understanding the critical eye of your grandfather, father, aunts, uncles that sees the game, knows the game, that can be transmitted. That's a part of this whole puzzle as well. Not to mention, the country this size, it is so difficult to kind of run and manage the game. Think about just the regions, the beliefs, the weather, the cultures within the country. How do you get a uniform system? It's almost, in my eyes, would be a great experiment, or better if they split the country up into mini nations and develop players in a different way, because it is. I mean, that the greatness of America is also its biggest challenge, is trying to cope with so many resources, so many regions, so many mini cultures. So lots of challenges, although there's been lots of growth, and I think we just got to enjoy the ride.
I love that. And by the way, when you say splitting the nation into different regions, I've just seen the movie Civil War for the third time, and that actually sent a chill down my bones, Steve Nash. But here's what I want to know. I understand that we're not going to win the World Cup this second, but I'm asking for everyone, Steve Nash. And I may sound like a character from Sunderland till I die as I say this. This is a pain for me. The United States has won in big tournaments since 1990 one massive game. And that was against Mexico at the World Cup 2002. It is unfathomable to me. We've seen Georgia do it. They beat Belgium. We've seen Slovakia have joy. We've seen Slovenia have joy. All the Slavs. We've seen Iceland in 2016. We've seen Wales. We saw Morocco do it at the last World Cup. Steve, why is it never us? I'm not talking about like a sustained journey all the way to glory. Why never in one game going toe-to-toe with a power in a game that matters outside of our region? Why is it never, ever the United States?
It will be. It's just how long we have to wait. It's just how long. So hopefully it comes up in the home nations World Cup. Hopefully we've got a couple of years here before there's a big result. Hopefully Canada gets it as well. But I think with the U.S. it's some patience needed as well. Have they got everything right? Absolutely not. Has there been a ton of growth? Tremendous growth. I think we see it at all levels: academies, youth football, MLS, players playing abroad. The national team's maybe the last thing here that needs to kind of matriculate and find that win, that big signature win that kind of allows them to springboard onto more consistent victories. But, like I said, I really admire a lot of the players on this team. At the same time, maybe I don't have quite as high expectations. I think it's coming, though. I think they can do it. It's just a matter of more time, more patience, and allowing them to all have a few more bites of the apple.
We are getting so many questions in, and I do want to get to them. But I want to ask you a couple of quick more. By the way, the voice of objective, calm, hand on the rudder reason, Alexi Lalas has just said, I'm at a loss for words. Where have we come since 2022? Where have we progressed? We haven't. This is our golden generation. It looks like we're wasting it. I don't give a crap what's happening inside. I don't care how much your players love you. I don't care how kumbaya it is. Lorno Salt in the chat says Matt Beasler. Oh, this was yesterday in Kansas City on stage with me and Brendan Hunt. Said what had to be said. He said the team's constructed primarily of squad players on big teams with systems that can't be implemented on the national team side. Look, so I've got one question for you. I mean, I guess we need to address this before we start to take questions from fans. I'm feeling a lot of Weltschmerz. I've got to be candid. That's a German word, the best thing the Germans have given us since Julian Green, which means, the reality can't satisfy the expectations you have in your mind. I think we're very good at Weltschmerz as American fans. But, I mean, this was a brave performance tonight. You've said it already. This was not about tonight. This was about the Panama game, really. And also the Bolivia game to some degree, where we could not finish the chances and paid for it. We put ourselves in a tough position from a goal difference perspective, and it has come back to eat us up. We were grouped. I hate that word. Hercules Gomez taught me it ahead of this tournament. It is so violating. We were grouped. We did not survive the group stage at a tournament we were hosting. So I need to ask you, Steve Nash, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here from a management perspective? This is the second cycle with that brief interruption for Gregg Berhalter. It's meant to be about progress. We didn't get out of a group stage, a group of Bolivia, Panama, Uruguay. I'll say that again: Bolivia, Panama, Uruguay. This was not this. We expected to get out of the group. Remember, we were worried, if we're being honest, about the Colombia Brazil quarterfinal, and they talked in commentary. I think it was Stu Holden. He said quite brilliantly. He said this was a referendum, this game, on Gregg Berhalter and whether there's forward momentum. This was some blow. This was some massive opportunity to grab the imagination of the wider United States viewing public ahead of this World Cup and drag them to us. Steve, you are a neutral. You're a very, very objective man. You're quite analytical. What do you think of what should be done from an American coaching perspective, and also what will be?
I mean, I'm not sure I have the answer for this. I'd have to, this is such a difficult question. This is the one that I hesitate to give a lot of opinions, because I think this is where you need a committee of people that are researching, really digging deep into what the approach is, what's the next step, why, when, where, how, who, all those questions. I mean, look, again, I didn't have a problem with the performance today, but like you said, the first two matches, that's where the problem is. That's where the problem is. You're not always going to beat Uruguay. You're probably rarely going to beat them, especially the way they came out and played. Like you said, intelligent, physical intensity, all the things. But there's the savvy, and the savvy perhaps wasn't there in the first two games, right? How to get out of a group, how to manage the two performances, how to come into a game knowing where's our blind spots here. How's Bolivia going to attack us? How's Panama going to attack us? They're going to try to drag us down in the muck, and they're going to try to see if we fall asleep for a minute. And that's what it takes in tournament football. Let me become the interviewer. How similar, and what would you do in a situation like England? They have incredible talent. They seem like they can't find any rhythm, can't pass to each other. We're looking at players that are world class apparently, and they're in as dire a position. Somehow they've found their way through. But considering the talent on display, like what's what's the process there? What's their style of play? Now to the viewers or the fellow that wrote in there, and does England have a problem because of all the varied style of plays? Is there something to do with players coming back, trying to now find a commonality, a consensus, a connectivity, a style, and how difficult does that become, given that the modern game has such disparate ways of playing? I feel like there was, and I'm not a football historian, but I feel like there was much fewer ways of playing in the Prism 20, 30 years ago than there are nowadays. Yeah. So how big a factor is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Both England and the United States have Crystal Palace legends at the helm. Look, I mean, I think they're in I think the United States team and the England team is weighed down by, 1966, the men won the World Cup. There's been years of yearning. The tabloid media is a buzzsaw, the weight of pressure on them. English people, that old joke from Steve Coogan, if you give an English person a choice between their own success and your failure, they'll choose your failure every time. Like, we revel in people's failure. It's very validating. And it crushes that team, suffocates them, smothers them, buries them alive. We have the opposite. We yearn, we dream. Like we're waiting, like we're almost like a balloon, a hydrogen balloon trying to lift that team up, and it just will not go. Ultimately, the England team, I actually think, and we may get questions on this, I think is about the Premier League is so exhausting. There's been no time for recovery. And the fact that so many of our guys play in elite Premier League teams, they're just utterly, utterly shattered. The teams that are doing great in the Euros, they've got a lot of players in the Bundesliga or in La Liga. Just like the Champions League, the English teams are actually wilting. We're beating the crap out of each other. We don't get to play Getafe. We don't get to have a weekend off,
Don't you dare say Mallorca.
You know what? I just sucked that back
Steve.
Steve, that's so great.
Dare say Mallorca.
Yeah, you're on to me, Stevie Nash. I sucked that back in. I didn't want you to come back at me and take my beautiful Everton down, so I sucked it back in. I think the England thing is complicated, but the reality is the solution for the United States is in the pragmatic play of these teams that are surging, the Austrias, the Switzerland, the inherent idea of football that they have embedded where every player knows their role. I look at the United States team, and that's ultimately the most frustrating part. I do believe these individuals have talent. I think Tyler Adams is a phenomenal football player. Weston McKennie, when he's really focused and locked in, can be just a bowling ball who's impossible to ignore. I think Anthony Robinson is a true weapon week in, week out. There's a lot of remarkable footballers. Christian Pulisic gave his all and can leave this tournament feeling unbelievable about himself. But do we have a coherent idea of how we're going to play? I mean, ultimately, that's the question. And one of the core things is about both teams. England, there was a fun team culture, 2018, 2022, full of kaleidoscopic rainbow unicorn swimming floaties. It was joyous. We loved our young players. It all felt so fun and light. It feels very heavy there now. And the United States team, they talk about the brotherhood. And Steve, you've had a lot of coaches in the NBA. The current crop of Gen Z Eagles, the American young players, have spoken about how coming back to the national team is where they feel most at home. It's a reprieve, a sanctuary. When Gregg Berhalter was rehired, they made it very clear the players wanted him. And you've been in a lot of locker rooms with a lot of coaches, and you've been a coach. There's a thin line between good vibe chemistry and players becoming, almost complacent, too cozy, too safe, too entitled. I see Tim Weah's red card. To some degree, you can coat that. There was almost like a gentleman who felt a lack of consequence. Any parent knows that when the dad tries to be too cool, too close to the kid, and becomes their friend and not their father, or a mother feels the same. When you blur those lines, just chaos occurs. Football teams need structure. What do you see, knowing what you know from the NBA reality?
Well, you do make a great point. If you look at it, the top 12 to 15 Americans are kind of set. There's not a ton of risk in a bad performance for most of them. So maybe that is a component here. But, you're right. I think you have to try to. But again, I think it's the like you said, the English like to tear someone down. The Americans, we like to build someone up. Maybe we built them up too much. Maybe we've set expectations too high. Maybe we believe they're capable of things, and maybe it's had the wrong psychological effect. Instead of going in with a wily, wise, watch our blind spots, as I said earlier, type of atmosphere. You said it. We tried to come out and play a modern style where we keep the ball and progress the ball. And at times, I love it. I'd much rather play that way. I'd love Ange ball all day long. At the same time, you got to have some pretty talented players who play together that way all the time. These guys come in and see each other 4 or 5 times a year. That can be very difficult to replicate in a national team. I think you see that. Look at the Euros. A lot of these teams, whether they're being pragmatic or even some of the better teams are just going into games figuring out, however you want to articulate it. It's very few of these top teams, even in the Euros, are playing Barcelona 2011. There's moments you go, oh, there it is. That's football. But they're playing the game at a step or two below that in order to stay alive until the moment provides itself. Then they spring forward and capitalize and play, fabulous football. So this is part of it. I think is recognizing international football is very different than club football. You have much less time together. You have a bunch of players that, while we think they've played together for years, they've played more matches and practice training sessions with their club team in a year than they probably have in a full cycle. So, these are components I think you have to be very wily and aware of. And again, perhaps that's a part of the equation here, and that the game is still young.
Nash, I listen to you, and ultimately I think you've nailed it. Like, the thing that's killing us, international football is about moments, winning. Ultimately, I do think England could go on and win this thing just through moments, and the nation will tell them they're crap every round. God, you're awful. Even as they win it, football will come home. And when it does come home, the nation will be like, yeah, that was miserable. You were awful. God, we hate you. Which would be the most English thing that ever happened. Right. But your point is right. Like, possibly listening to you, I'm realizing the worst thing that we've done is to think this mission of we're going to show the world that Americans can ball. Everyone else is just trying to win. Look, there was a Brazilian manager in the early 2000s who said every other team just has to win. Why do the Brazilians have to play beautifully and win at the same time? And I think that when I watch the American team, let's stop trying to show the world America. You show the world America can win by winning. That's it. Just win the bloody games. Don't worry about like what we're showing them. You don't have to get your nunchuckers out and whip them around like at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark and just dazzle. Just win the bloody games and take the pressure off ourselves. It's almost like our insecurity that we feel lesser, and so we have to show ourselves. That's what's doing us in this moment. There are talented human beings on this side. Play pragmatic football, find a system that brings out the best. You know, even as what you said is true, like we maybe blow ourselves up a bit too much. We're even thinking about it now, like Mourinho, we need Mourinho, get Pep. And by the way, Pep probably will be an international manager in his next job, but not before 2026. There is a chance Pep would come to America. He can't be the Spanish manager. He's Catalan. He will never be the Spanish manager. He'll either be the English manager. You could say he could possibly be the United States manager. Carlo Ancelotti loves the United States. He was in a Montana bar this very weekend. I mean, we dream big dreams. I mean, the people who want Greg gone, and you can make a case. You can definitely make a case. We're going to get to the questions. I'm sure I'm going to hear it right now. I mean, who do you have? Who do you have? Pellegrino Materazzi, New Jersey's Bundesliga wonder of Hoffenheim. Would he leave the club in this moment? You know, Emma Hayes. You all love Emma Hayes. You joke about Emma Hayes. I think you joke seriously about Emma Hayes. I'd get Nate the Great, honestly, and have him leave West Ham or wherever the hell he is, come be with us. But let's get into it. Gregg's talking. We know that we're capable of more. This tournament, we didn't show it. We should have done better. I mean, what's Gregg going to say at the moment? The thing I yearn for is we've missed an opportunity. That's the thing I'll say before we take your questions. Great piece in New York Magazine this week about why people love football in America, pack stands to see Argentina and Messi, but don't turn up in those same numbers, even though tonight was actually quite a spectacle. In Kansas City. It's a fascinating read, a social, cultural, political analysis. And it ends by saying this Copa is just a dry run for the World Cup, but also a dry run as a test to see if the United States can get back on the radar nationally. And I feel tonight that's probably my greatest ache in every regard, that we've blown this opportunity to make noise, get more fans into our bubble, and grow the game. Look, we can talk about Belgium, France if you want. We can talk about Portugal, the incredible game, honestly, a psychodrama for Ronaldo, a riveting watch if it comes up in the questions. I do want to get to the questions because there's so bloody many of them, and we will get to them. But let's bring up, it's Evan Fournier. Tell us where you are, you beautiful human being, and what's your question?
How you doing? Can you hear me?
Evan, we hear you loud and clear over. Where are you, you beautiful human being?
I'm in Leon, Spain. So I spent the whole evening watching Portugal, and it was mind breaking. But here's the deal. I'm going to give you one comment, and I'm going to give you one question. All right.
We got a lot of questions, so keep the comment tight, you beautiful human being.
I'll keep it real fast. So I've been to 2 Everton matches in Goodison Park, and I've been to the ones where Everton won 1-0, and I've been to the one where in Merseyside Derby this past spring. So do I need to come back home because I'm 2 for 2 in Everton, which is kind of a crazy one.
Evan, this is the greatest humble brag of all time. It was not Sean Dyche's tracksuit. It was Evan Fournier. Evan, we will pull this off. You will become just genuinely like the beautiful carving on the front of a ship. You will be at every Everton game next season, and Champions League. Here we come. You're an incredible human being. There are so many questions. I want to try and jam as many as I can in.
Who would you put on your Sunday League team out of all the non-footballers that you've ever interviewed?
Steve Nash. Can I just tell you?
Me? No.
Hands down, Evan. Evan, are you Steve Nash's agent? Are you Martin Nash's agent trying to get Big Marts back into the...
I was going to pick Stephen Colbert, someone else like...
No, Nashy. Can I just tell you? I was laughing with Steve Nash before we came on. The first time I met Steve Nash, it was 2014. It was actually 10 years ago, almost to the day. It was May 30th. I looked it up. in Whippany, New Jersey.
Really?
This is incredible, Steve. I don't know if you remember. You train with Inter Milan. Do you remember that? You train with them.
I do. I do remember.
And I went out with a film crew from ESPN to film you. I thought it'd just be a funny thing. Oh, Steve Nash, the NBA star, is going to play with Inter Milan. Steve Nash bossed the game against Inter Milan.
John Oliver would take his ball and go home.
But Steve Nash bossed the game, Evan Fournier. And afterwards, I interviewed Cambiasso. And I thought, again, it was going to be like a nice, hey, yeah, cool. Steve Nash, Cambiasso's jaw was open. He was like, genuinely, we need Steve Nash to come and play with Inter Milan this season. Steve Nash, do you even remember this? Was this just like a casual scrimmage for you? Because you were electric.
Well, can we get Cambiasso on the line here? I'd love for him to spend a few minutes talking about me.
By the way, you wore number 10 as well, and then you just bossed the game. It was genuine. The Inter Milan guys were training for a season ahead, and the panic in their eyes. They're like, "Oh God, this is going to be a long season." I love you in every regard, Evan. It's great to be there. Get some sleep, baby.
Cheers. Have a good night.
Evan.
Molly, come on up. Tell us where you are and what's your question.
Hi, Raj. I'm in Denver. Nice to talk to you.
It's great to be with you, Molly. Tonight's original camera view did remind me of the Mile High Stadium.
Yeah, it was probably on top of Mount Evans, frankly. So I called in after the Bolivia game to you and Davo, and I asked, what needs to change if we're going to win the group? And you said, this is a leading question, to hold on until after the Panama match. Well, now we've been grouped. So I ask again, what needs to change? But this time, what needs to change between now and 2026? If we have a chance at a deep run in the World Cup at home, what do we need to do?
Molly, Stevie Nash, do we have a chance at a deep run? Are we deluding ourselves? Are there things we could and should be doing to prepare ourselves for this World Cup? I mean, I think Molly's hinting about a managerial change, a change of tone, a change of culture, a change of leadership.
Perhaps.
Am I leading the witness, Molly, here? I've watched a lot of CSIs recently. Objection overruled. Is that what you're really asking?
I think we didn't play the squad that we have as effectively as we could have. Management was a problem. I think there are other problems too, but I'm curious what you guys think.
Stevie Nash, you understand about changes. You understand about cultural changes, tactical changes, changes.
I do think we touched on something through our conversation here about kind of expectations, about reality, about being
reality, Steve.
Being really, and I don't mean this in any accusatory way, but in a humble way of we have to earn it every night instead of we're going to like you said, the insecurity to prove that we can outplay people. Yeah, all those players are terrific footballers. They can outplay people in moments. But when it comes to, finding a cohesive style of play and trying to play on the front foot continually when you don't have those time, that time together, that can be very difficult. I've watched my beloved Spurs, turn to Ange ball, and it's been amazing, beautiful, love it. But these are guys that are training together 5-6 days a week. This is a group that's trained 5-6 weeks a year. So I think that's where there. I think there is some sense in reality in that, and that. So having a little bit more pragmatic style, it doesn't have to be all the way parking the bus, but they can be somewhere in between that kind of covers your blind spots, as I said. Approaching games in a sensible way that you don't get grouped, but at the same time showing, that you can turn it on when the opportunities arise. I think it also becomes a little easier to turn it on if that's the way you play, instead of always having to search and seek the front foot for a group that doesn't play together week in, week out.
Molly, I think you're asking a great question. And the reality is we're in a surreal reality. We've got to acknowledge this if we're being honest, in that we had a first cycle with Gregg Berhalter that ended in the Netherlands, the round, the first knockout round exit. Louis van Gaal danced on our grave a little bit, told us we didn't adjust. We were tactically naive, which was pretty haunting, but very Dutch. And we all know what happened in the wake of that. And then Greg came back, and Greg came back because the narrative is the players asked for Greg. They liked him. They felt safe. They felt good. But we are in a surreal reality. In a Premier League team, you hear it week in, week out. A manager is on very, very, very thin ice when it's a cliche in England. They've lost the fans. The Chelsea fans sing against the manager. If that happens too much, the team needs to make a change. Graham Potter lost the fans. And the surreal reality of where we are is that for a large section of the United States fans, Gregg Berhalter had lost the fans before he took the job for the second time. And that's kind of where we are right now. That's the predicament that the United States are in. And I'm seeing the press conferences that are going on now, and the players are saying what they should say, because they do love this man, clearly, and they are very much addressing their adoration. And that's where we are, is ultimately we need to understand where we are. We're not in that locker room. I think there's going to be some very serious, I'd hope there's some strategic conversations, some very honest conversations. But I've not seen a situation like this where, I'm seeing on my call sheet, we have 150 calls. I'd say about 140 of them are pretty well all asking the same thing. Which is, can we get Slovakia's coach or some version of that? Or
Jesse Marsh in.
The next question is can we get Switzerland's coach? It's that's kind of where we are. So I would say that I would imagine it's being deeply considered, and we will see where we end up in the wake of it. And what we're looking for, football has so often existed in the shadows in the United States of America, where things can just happen and there's no outcry. That's the quasi-odd reality. Like in England, when I followed England when Roy Hodgson was butchering the team in 2012. The press pack, I'd never seen anything like it. It was horrific. And the outcry from the fans was enormous. There was no way that man could continue. And the honest truth is we don't have it right now. When things go badly for the US team, things just go silent in the United States, in the wider realm. The team just fall off the press pages. The noise is not heard. The fans are not. Right now, if this was in a European country, there'd be outrage. And the honest truth is we're in this odd reality. As Steve was saying, the game is not yet developed. We're still a baby. That's a phrase I'm going to take from Steve Nash. But that's kind of where we are. And I think it's a very odd time, a very surreal time, a frightening time with 2026 so bloody close. So the next steps, there's no doubt, are going to be critical. I want to get a couple more questions in while we can. Raymond from Maryland. Tell us where you are in Maryland, you beautiful human being, and what's your question?
Raj, I'm in Towson, Maryland, home of great American Michael Phelps. And
Towson State.
Yes, sir. Now, formerly Towson State, now Towson University.
Excuse me. Sorry to diss everybody who is a graduate of Towson University. I have been there when it was Towson State, and it was an amazing night out, I just want to say. But go on, Raymond.
So you mentioned earlier, why can't we have nice things? Have a Slovakia night, a Switzerland night, an Austria night.
That's what we asked for.
And I've always looked back on my early memories with the national team fondly. Spain 2009, Algeria 2010, Ghana 2014. Is the next step then shunning those memories in the feel-good stories of beating smaller nations while the Confederation Cup was not a small win? And is it bucking those memories and hoping for more? Because I almost find myself hoping for just late-minute winners against a Panama, and maybe not even seeing realistically that a win against Uruguay is possible.
Oh, God, bring back the Confederations Cup, Steve Nash. We were so good at the Confederations Cup.
Well, again, in the Confederations Cup, I don't think we tried to play pep ball. Not that that's what this team is trying to do, but I think it's perhaps a little bit. It's too sophisticated, perhaps, for the way they should approach games. That's a difficult thing. I'd love to see them, any football team play that way. But the reality is the reality, and that is very difficult to do. And it's very difficult to do when you're not a club team that's been doing it for a season, let alone 2, 3, 4 seasons. So, I think when that Confederations Cup team was full of, piss and vinegar for like they had personality. They had, a real security in who they were and how they could get it done. And it wasn't necessarily by trying to overachieve. And so by style of play. So, blame's easy to throw around. It's really easy to throw around. I think it's, the performance today was good. And we may be having a different conversation if they had lost 1-0 tonight, but won the previous 2 games. And so, it takes you back to the whole picture. It takes you back to having a realistic view of it, not overreacting to one performance or the other. It's kind of where are we? Where have we been over the last 6 months, 18 months? Where have we been over the course of these 3 matches? Trying to take yourself out from snapshots and trying to create opinions off of, small little snippets, but kind of looking at where's the trends, where are the markers, what have we been saying, what were we saying 3 years ago, 18 months ago today. So I think that has been somewhat consistent with what people have been saying. Now it's a matter of really digging in and figuring out realistically who is this team, this program, and these players.
Nash, I think you've nailed a really important conflict, which is, I think Gregg came from club football, came from MLS club football, came from the Columbus Crew. And I do think he's had an incredible learning curve in that first cycle. He came with his club football ideas. Something I'm looking forward to talking to Emma Hayes about. She's a club football manager. She's now running an international team. You've nailed how different an international team as a creature is to club football. And I think part of the challenge that I can't get my head around right now is that ultimately there's a marketing idiom, which is you can take a new product to an old market or an old product to a new market, but you can't take a new product to a new market, or it's very difficult to do that. And I do think with this youthful team, it's very hard to have a youthful team with a youthful manager that's also learning with a steep learning curve in those moments. And that's ultimately, I think when I'm older and we look back on this period, that's what I'll probably think. What if there was a Carlo Ancelotti-esque kind of character who'd seen it all, done it all, like Marcelo Bielsa, who just knew every single trick, and the young guys looked to and was like, don't worry, he knows, we got this, he believes in us, we got this, as opposed to he's on the learning curve, we're all learning together. I think that does create an unnecessary chaos. I think at times this has been, it was the same with Jurgen Klinsmann. He used to give meetings to journalists where he described his style. The first one I went to, he said, I wanted an American team that reflect the DNA of the nation. We will attack with 10. We will defend with 10. And I remember writing my notes in my book as I took the notes. I was like, I want to be a supermodel. And there's just some things I will never be. Why would you try and be what you can't be? And I do believe that we can be, we're not going to be a great team immediately. We can be a very good team. We just need to know what we can be, how to get there. International football is about getting a system that fits your best players, or creating or choosing the right players for the system you want to play. Ultimately, that's the square that we need to circle, or whatever the phrase is. And that's kind of where we are right now. I want to take another couple of quick ones. There's a beautiful one for Steve I want to close with. But Ryan from Illinois, anybody from Illinois, and by the way, from Towson State, God bless, Tamir Goodman, an incredible basketball player. That's what I'm remembering now. Ryan from Illinois, tell us where you are in that great state and what's your question for Steve Nash.
Hey, good evening, Raj and Steve. Ryan calling from Decatur, Illinois. First time caller, very, very long time listener, back from the Grantland days. Happy to finally talk to you, Raj.
Likewise.
Great. I just wanted, and I had this question lined up, and Steve Nash kind of stole my thunder, which is not something I ever thought I'd say in my life. But we talked about this golden generation of U.S. players, but I'm wondering at what point we just need to kill this narrative that this is a golden generation. Because outside of Pulisic, I'm really struggling to see any truly premier talent, at least right now, that's really developed. We've seen Matt Turner play himself out of the Premier League. Gio Reyna's out of the club here soon. So I guess I'm just wondering, just kind of, Raj, your thoughts on that. Just kind of, where do you see this talent pool at? And just the last point, as I was waiting, I looked at the 2014 World Cup starting 11, and honestly, I take at least half of those guys over this current roster just purely on a talent level. So I'll hang up and listen now. Thanks for taking the call.
Ryan, thanks for listening and having an incredible, terrible taste in football podcast. I mean, Steve, you said something beautiful earlier, which I'm really fascinated to hear you say a little bit more about. Like, you have a sense of who we are from an outside perspective as an objective neutral. How good are we in Europe? Because we got an incredible, we do sing. I remember in the run up to the 2022 World Cup, a lot of, they're remarkable. So many fan sites would work out what our 11 is for the starting game would be. I mean, the tweets were like, I feel sorry for our opponents, like Tim Weah's going to cook, Gio's going to boss them. We love our guys. We love their success. I am so proud of these. It's hard. By the way, listeners, it's hard to be an American in Europe. It is so bloody hard. Luca De La Torre came on our show and talked about how shocking the culture shock was for him at Fulham when he went to the youth academy. If you want to listen to how hard it is, dig out that interview. These guys are incredible. I do believe, like, when we're like, oh my God, I feel sorry for our opponents, Tim Weah going to cook, Gio going to cook, all that stuff. I think we do get a bit high on our own supply. And I believe you think we get a bit high on our own supply. Can you just tell us where we are, like, when we banned the golden, how good it's a great harvest of talent. They've made that step to Europe in a way we never have before, because our footballers were sucked back in 2014. Michael Bradley came back, Josie came back, Clint came back, Tim Howard came back. We love our 3-ply toilet paper. England doesn't have it. We come back for it. Where are we? Like, what kind of weight class are we in is what I guess I'm asking. Can you give us a dose of sanity?
Yeah, the easy answer is, what are the results saying? What are the results saying? And so the results haven't necessarily lived up to maybe the hype. Having said that, I really like the players. I really admire the U.S. players. Terrific players. They are. Whether it's partly style of play, partly elevating, they are terrific players. They're exceeding maybe previous generation success at club level, but in comparison to who? In comparison to other U.S. players in U.S. teams. So, this is not a U.S. house league. This is international football. And so they still have a lot to prove. They still have to go out there and beat some bigger teams and continue to grow and matriculate. But the talent's there. They're terrific footballers, but compared to who? There's terrific footballers in many, many nations around the world.
God bless. I'll say two very quick things before we take the last question. And the first is, we have definitely evolved. Our boys are over there. They are grinding. They are sharpening
100%.
themselves where they need to be in the best leagues in the world, trying their hardest. It's a greasy pole. It's a slippery pole. And they are grinding their way up together. Number two, we are developing US players who, for the first time, are creative. The US player, when Steve and I first met, 2014, they were mostly, if they were in Europe, they were kind of good citizens. They were good locker room guys. They were utility players. They were athletic. They were not creators. They were not talented. We are evolving into developing those. And then I'll say this. Look at the Euros. Look at Austria. Look at Switzerland. Switzerland have been crap forever. Switzerland have taken a step up. Austria have taken a step up. They have an idea of football. They have good footballers. They have a number of excellent footballers at the core. We have a couple. And then everybody else knows their role. That's ultimately what we need. You can, in international football, if you have a system, everybody knows their role, and it is coherent. The idea of football, that's what we're still lacking. That's why the frustration is for me. The idea of football that we're trying to play is still lacking, because we're caught up in the insecurity of, we've got to show the world that we've got to dazzle Barcelona 2011. We've got to play this style of football. International football ultimately is quite simple. And as long as everybody, as Steve Nash has said tonight, with fleeting training moments, knows their role, that is the trick here. Last question. I'm going to hand it to Zachariah. Come on up, tell us where you are, and what's your question for the great Stevie Nash?
Hi, Raj. Can you hear me?
Zachariah, I hear you loud and clear. Over.
Yes, good. I am from Greenville, South Carolina. It's an honor to be in the presence of the second greatest British Columbian of all time, of course, behind the wonderful Carly Rae Jepsen. I have two quick questions for you, Steve. Did you feel like a bird when Nelly Furtado referenced you in the hit song Promiscuous? And two, how far do you think Canada can go in this Copa America? Do you think they can go pretty far? I think they can beat Venezuela. How far do you think they can go in this tournament?
Well, it's tournament football also is just unpredictable. So we yes, they have an opportunity to advance. Venezuela is a tricky side, though. A tricky side. So they may not have the canary yellow kits of Brazil or the iconic Argentina jerseys, but they are a tricky out. So it's going to be a great test for them. I think if they have the right approach, they give themselves a chance. And it's a great learning lesson, I think, for them either way. You don't get many opportunities like this to play meaningful matches against tricky, wise, streetwise football teams. So this is great for Canada to be in this position. Hopefully they can take a big step and continue to advance. And I felt unbelievable when Nelly Furtado name dropped me a Promiscuous Girl. It was, we actually grew up in the same neighborhood, but she's about 4 years younger than me, so I didn't know her. But she was loyal to the hood and gave me a shout out, so I'm eternally grateful.
Oh, that was an incredible question. By the way, you've nailed it. There is a parallel show in Venezuela where they're talking about the Venezuelan generation as we believe our US team can. That Venezuela-Canada game is not to be overlooked. Jesse Marsh is not overlooking it in any way. Do not look beyond Venezuela. I cannot wait for it. I'm so happy for Jesse, happy for the people of Wisconsin who have been annexed to Canada. You're all now part of Canada, but I think you paid a price that's worth it because you're still in the bloody Copa. Thank you for all your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. Genuinely, there are so bloody many of you. If you have a question and we didn't get to you, call us in 646-450-9472, 646-450-9472. We're going to tape a special edition of WGFOP where I'll answer as many of your questions on this topic as possible. I'm going to thank Steve in 1 second. I do want to look ahead at everything coming up the rest of the week at Men in Blazers World Headquarters on this truly sad day. I've got to say, I feel so much bloody better after processing it with a quite rational, quite objective, quite analytical Steve Nash, who's in his own way, with his calm, his sense of proportion, and his opposite of the hyperbole that I bring to the table has calmed me down a little. I'm still a weeping wound, but we're back tomorrow with another Do It Live in the wake of the Euros around 5 p.m, give or take a penalty kick or two. All of our work here this tournament has been brought to you by the incredible human beings at BMW. Massive thank you to them. We popped up a video today of our trip around the great city of Kansas City. It's on our YouTube. Savor it, enjoy every moment. Ultimately, I've met so many incredible American fans. We did a live show last night in Kansas City. So many American fans. I know you're probably weeping and in agony tonight, but it is the memories that you make, the memories you make of joy, the memories you make of nights like tonight. You will carry them with you. You are incredible human beings. We will see better days. Wednesday, that WGFOP, give us a bell, 646-450-9472. We'll preview the quarterfinals of both of these tournaments. Steve, I'm going to give you the last word because I have loved every single second of being with you. You really are an analytical gentleman, a calm, rational. We don't have a lot of rational on the Men in Blazers Media Network. You have upticked that by about 500%. So just speak to our nation in this moment. It's not a great night. It's a dark night. By the way, listeners, you will remember this night for a long, long time. This was not Cuba. This was not Trinidad and Tobago. That was the Panama game. Tonight was defiant. Tonight was audacious. It was sweaty. It was defeat. It was Pulisic. It was a dog fight, and we held our own. But Steve, do you have just give us a last word of wisdom from your everything?
Just a rational thought.
Yeah, please. God bless. It's
right.
The last one you'll
Canada's
have.
gonna win the Copa. Come on, Canada. Here we go. We're gonna win it. We're gonna win the Copa. Come on. We're gonna win this thing.
Oh my God, Steve, you led me. For an hour, you were disciplined. For an hour, you led me astray. That was like Panama leading the United States into a maze of hurt. For an hour, you acted rational. For an hour, you acted sane. And then you just sucker punched me in a way I never saw coming.
Streetwise, combat ball.
I hope you're right, dude. I hope you're right. Jesse Marsh with that Cooper. God, that would be something. I'm going to say goodbye with a beautiful letter from a GFOP, Carrie Buckner from Pittsburgh, Mighty Yinsner. She's a mental health therapist. She wrote a beautiful long letter to meninblazers@gmail.com. She wrote about courage, which is how we end every show, the word from Dan Rather. And she wrote, I see that word in a new light. I want to share with you. I hope it lifts us in the context of football, aka America and England, consistently inflicting sadness and disappointment in this world of chaos, even as we endure the full human experience that includes pain and suffering. By the way, it does. Life includes pain and suffering, and that's what we're feeling. Back to Carrie. She says, I hope this phrase is a source of encouragement. It comes from psychologist Rollo May, who wrote, courage. And this is for the US team. This is for US fans tonight. If you're in pain, courage is not the absence of despair. It's rather the capacity to move ahead in spite of despair. Carrie, thank you for those words. They lifted me when I needed it. Steve Nash with your Canada are going to win the Cooper. I hope it's true, you beautiful human being. Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Raj. Speak soon.
You're an amazing man. To all of you, courage, keep going amidst the despair, and go USA. Big love.